after I refused to pay $80,000 for my daughter's luxury wedding. She set me up at dinner, then she threw boiling tea at my feet. Stay with me till the very end and let me know where you're watching from so I can see how far the truth really spreads. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since my daughter Emily and I last spoke. The last conversation ended with her slamming the door screaming that I had ruined her life. I remember standing there in the kitchen holding the teacup she left behind, still warm, still shaking in my hand. So when the phone rang that Thursday morning and I saw her name flash on the screen, my heart stopped. I stared at it for a moment, wondering if I even wanted to hear her voice. But instinct took over. I answered. She sounded soft, too soft, the kind of softness that feels rehearsed. She asked if I'd like to meet for dinner, just the two of us. No pressure, she said, just to talk. She even suggested Franco's, that little Italian place with the string lights where her father and I used to celebrate our anniversary. That should have been my first warning. It was such a specific choice. A place loaded with history. A place I hadn't stepped into since my husband passed away 7 years ago. And suddenly, she wanted to go there. Reconnect. Start fresh. I almost said no. I wanted to say no. But then she said she missed me. And that was enough to make me hesitate. Mothers are built to forgive. That's the flaw and the strength. We carry so much and still find room to hope. Even after betrayal, even after disappointment, we hold on to the sliver of a chance that our children might come back to us whole. So I said yes. I told her I'd meet her at 6:30. I hung up the phone and just sat there for a long time, staring at the sunlight creeping across the floor. Somewhere deep in my chest, something whispered, "Be careful." But I pushed it aside. I wanted to believe this was peace offering. That maybe, just maybe, Emily was coming back to me not for money, not for favors, but because she missed her mother. It started with cake samples and floral arrangements. Emily had just gotten engaged, and I thought we were having a regular mother-daughter wedding planning talk. She pulled out a glossy brochure for a vineyard resort wedding in Sonoma, complete with private chefs and fireworks. Then she dropped the number. $80,000. I stared at her, thinking maybe she was joking. I laughed lightly at first, then realized she was dead serious. She said it was the only kind of wedding Travis would agree to. I told her calmly that I could offer $20,000, a generous gift by any standard. The air shifted instantly. Her smile vanished. She accused me of being selfish. She said I was trying to control her happiness. I reminded her I had worked my entire life, saved carefully, and wasn't about to hand over my retirement for a single day. She stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped. Her voice went sharp, high, and piercing. She said I never supported her dreams, that I always favored Ryan, that I didn't want her to be happy because I had failed in my own marriage. That hit deep. But I held my ground. I asked why Travis wasn't contributing. I mentioned he hadn't worked a stable job in years. That's when she lost it. She grabbed the teacup off the table and hurled it. It hit my leg, shattered on impact. Hot liquid splashed across my shin. The burn stung instantly, but I barely reacted. I was too stunned by what I saw in her face. Rage, but also fear. I looked her in the eye and said what I'd been holding in for months. I called Travis a gold digger. A man who wore designer shoes but borrowed rent money from his fiancée. I told her she was being played, and I refused to bankroll her mistake. She dropped to the floor sobbing. Not soft crying, but loud, uncontrollable sobs that shook her body. She slid down the cabinet like the fight had drained every ounce of strength. Then she told me she was pregnant. 3 months. And with a trembling voice, she said Travis had warned he would leave if she didn't get the money. I couldn't speak. I felt something inside me snap, not from anger but from grief. I wanted to run to her. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just stood there. She said she couldn't do it alone. She didn't want to be a single mom. She didn't want to end up like me. She said if I really loved her, I would make sure she never had to raise a child without a man. Her words cut deep, but beneath the accusations, I heard what she couldn't say clearly. She was terrified. Still, the way she said it, the way she used her unborn child like a bargaining chip, made one thing clear. She had already chosen him, not me. For days after that fight, the silence between us felt like a punishment. I didn't reach out. She didn't either. I thought that might be the end of everything. But then 3 weeks later, she called. Her voice was softer, her words careful, and suddenly I was facing the same question every mother dreads. Do I protect my heart or open it up again and hope this time it won't break? I stood in front of my closet longer than I care to admit. My fingers brushed past newer dresses, brighter ones, more expensive ones. But I stopped at the one with the soft floral pattern, faded at the collar, worn but loved. I had worn it the night my husband took me to Franco's for our anniversary, back when Emily was still in pigtails, and called him Daddy without hesitation. I slipped it on slowly, half afraid the fabric wouldn't fit the way it used to. But it did. It clung gently to my shoulders like it remembered me. I looked in the mirror and saw a version of myself I hadn't seen in years. Older, yes, but also steadier. A little softer. A little harder, too. I put on a pair of pearl earrings. The ones Emily gave me for Mother's Day when she was 15. She saved up 2 months from her part-time job at the bookstore. She was so proud that day. I remember the way she made me close my eyes before slipping the box into my hand. That memory still warms me. I held onto it as I got ready that night like armor. But there was something else in the room with me. Something I couldn't name. A weight in my chest. A whisper in the back of my mind that said, be careful. I tried to push it down. I told myself this could be the night things changed. That Emily wasn't coming to ask for more. That she missed me. That we could talk like we used to before Travis, before the money, before everything felt like a transaction. I reached for my purse and paused. Just for a second. Then I took out the checkbook. Left it behind. I told myself it was symbolic. That I was walking into this dinner as a mother, not a wallet. That I was choosing love, not guilt. That I still had something to offer her that money couldn't buy. Franco smelled like garlic and old wine, just like I remembered. The soft lighting glowed amber across white tablecloths. For a moment, I almost let myself believe this could be what Emily promised. A simple dinner. A start. I asked the hostess for the reservation. She smiled and pointed toward the back near the private alcove. That was when I saw them. Emily seated with her back perfectly straight. Travis beside her, his arm resting on the booth like he owned the place. And across from them were 2 strangers. Both men, both in dark suits with leather briefcases at their sides. My stomach dropped. They weren't smiling. They weren't eating. They were waiting. One of them looked up and nodded as I approached. No warmth. Just calculation. Emily rose and kissed my cheek. Her touch felt like frost. I froze. My daughter used to kiss me like I was home. Now it felt like a transaction. Travis stood and gestured to the empty seat across from them like he was hosting a business lunch. I sat down slowly, trying to read the room, trying to steady my breath. I looked at Emily. Her eyes didn't meet mine. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She looked hardened, not angry, not apologetic, just cold. Then Travis leaned in. His voice was smooth and practiced, the kind of tone you hear in boardrooms, not family tables. He said they wanted to discuss a financial opportunity. I blinked. I glanced at the 2 men beside them. One opened his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. The gesture was quiet, rehearsed, deliberate. Suddenly, Franco's didn't feel warm anymore. The lights felt harsh. The chatter of other tables turned distant, like muffled echoes. Travis explained that they had prepared some documents for me to review. Emily sat motionless, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She still wouldn't look at me. I felt the walls closing in. The room shrank. My heart thudded as I opened the folder and saw the title printed across the top. Financial Guardianship Proposal. My name. My assets. My future. I looked back at my daughter, searching for any sign of doubt, any hesitation. But her face was stone. My voice cracked as I asked what this was. Travis smiled. His voice calm, controlled. He said this was simply a better way to manage things moving forward. At that moment, I knew. This wasn't a dinner. It was a trap. I had been summoned not to reconcile, but to surrender. Travis slid the folder across the table like he was handing me a receipt. It wasn't. It was a power of attorney. Thick. Final. Ruthless. My name was printed at the top, bold and clinical, like I was already being written off. Emily sat there with eyes like polished stone. No flicker of warmth. No regret. Her voice came out like a blade wrapped in silk. She said if I didn't sign, I would never see my grandchild. I looked at the paper and saw my name printed like it was already a ghost. She had come prepared to bury me emotionally. Not at the hospital. Not at birthdays. Not ever. Then she pulled something else from her purse. A folded document. She didn't speak as she laid it in front of me. But I knew what it was the second I saw the signature. A legal declaration. She had drafted the paperwork to cut me out of her life. Like I was a threat. Like I was disposable. Something inside me cracked. Not loud. Not obvious. But deep. Quiet. Like ice breaking beneath frozen water. I looked at her hands. Clenched. White-knuckled. This wasn't spontaneous. This was war. They came armed. She had rehearsed this speech, practiced it like a performance. And now she was reading from the script he wrote. I turned to Travis, and I swear I saw him smirk. His voice, smooth and oily, slid across the table. He said it was time for me to pass the torch, that I should let someone younger take care of things, that it was all out of concern, for my well-being, for the future. Lies dressed in charm. He called me outdated, vulnerable, a risk. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't about care. It was conquest. A calculated effort to erase me from my own legacy. I stared at the signature line on the paper. My hand didn't move. My body burned with humiliation, with rage, with heartbreak. I had carried Emily for 9 months, held her when she screamed through the night, skipped meals so she could eat, buried dreams so she could chase hers. And now she sat there, silent, cold, willing to sign me away like I was nothing but a locked vault, standing between her and his ambition. I turned to Emily, my voice low but steady. I asked her if this was really her idea, if she was doing this because she wanted to or because she felt she had to. Her eyes shifted just for a second, and that second told me everything. She broke. Her shoulders collapsed. She buried her face in her hands and began to cry, not like a manipulator, but like a little girl who had finally run out of places to hide. The tears came fast, messy, with sharp breaths and shaking hands. She said Travis told her he wouldn't marry her unless she secured the money. She said she tried to talk him out of it, that she cried when he made her rehearse this plan, that every step toward betrayal made her feel smaller, that if I didn't pay, he'd walk away, that she'd be alone, pregnant, and discarded. She said he used those exact words. Discarded. Like she was something you throw away once it's broken. I listened, torn open from the inside. I wanted to pull her into my arms. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to hold her and tell her she deserved better. But I also wanted to shake her for letting it get this far, for choosing threats over truth, coercion over courage. She said she didn't want to end up like me, alone, fighting for everything, raising a child without help, without safety. She said it like an accusation, but I knew it wasn't. It was fear talking, pure, bone-deep fear. I looked at her, my daughter, and saw someone I didn't recognize. Not because she had become cruel, but because she had become desperate. And in that desperation, she had chosen to hurt the one person who would help her no matter what. Then she said something that shattered me completely. She whispered that if I didn't sign, she'd go through with the letter, that she'd cut me out, that she didn't want to, but she would, because she had no other choice. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't just being manipulated. She was being held hostage, and I was being asked to pay her ransom. I looked into her eyes and saw a little girl drowning in a storm she couldn't escape. But I also saw something else. A line I couldn't cross. A door that was closing on me. And then for the first time that night, I did something I hadn't dared to. I reached into my purse and texted one word to my son. Now. I was drowning in silence when I heard his voice. Clear. Steady. Angry in that calm, dangerous way only Ryan had. He stood at the edge of the table like a storm had just stepped into the room. Travis jumped up, hand out, grinning like a weasel in a suit. Ryan didn't even look at him. His eyes were locked on mine. He asked one thing. Did you ask them for help, Mom? I shook my head. My voice couldn't make it out of my mouth. I just shook my head. His jaw tightened so hard, I thought it might snap. Then, without asking, he grabbed the stack of documents, slammed it shut, and stared down Travis like he was already in a courtroom. And I saw it. The smirk drop. The panic creep in. Ryan's voice came next. Flat. Measured. Lethal. He said he had been recording since the moment he walked in. That if one more word of manipulation came out of Travis's mouth, he'd have cops here in under 5 minutes. Elder abuse. Coercion. Fraud. He listed them off like a grocery list of charges. Emily didn't look up. Travis backed away slightly, swallowing the last of whatever script he had memorized. And I just sat there, my body still, my soul shaking. But for the first time in that room, I wasn't alone. Ryan didn't yell. He didn't need to. Every word landed like a punch. Every stare broke down walls I didn't know I had built just to survive that dinner. He turned to me, not asking, just knowing, and said, Mom, let's go. You don't owe these people another second. He helped me up, one hand on my shoulder, the other shielding me like I was the last thing worth protecting in this place. And maybe I was. Maybe for him I always had been. I walked out with my head up, legs shaking but spine intact. Because Ryan came in not as my son. He came in as my shield. And that was the first time all night I remembered who I was. Not a victim. Not a burden. A mother. A woman. And I was done playing silent. Ryan's arrival stopped the bleeding. But it didn't close the wound. Not yet. They thought I'd be so shaken by the ambush that I'd walk away quietly. Or worse, beg. They still didn't understand who they were dealing with. I didn't say a word. I just reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. My fingers didn't shake. They had done this before. I scrolled to one name, pressed call, walked 3 steps away from the table. Just far enough to breathe. Just far enough to make it clear this was no reaction. This was strategy. Nancy answered. I spoke low but firm. Plan B. Franco's. Bring everything. Then I hung up. When I turned back, they were staring. Emily looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. Travis was still trying to process that I wasn't running, that I hadn't cracked, that I had teeth. He asked what I was doing. His voice wasn't confident anymore. I didn't look at him. I looked at her. The little girl who once cried when I left her at preschool. The woman who now brought lawyers to trap her own mother. I knew the second she said Margaret instead of Mom. That wasn't a daughter calling her mother. That was a negotiator calling a mark. I knew when she chose Franco's. I knew when she asked to meet alone. No one invites you to a warm reunion in a cold suit. I told her I didn't survive divorce debt and single motherhood just to hand over my future to a man who called me irrelevant. I told her she didn't need to fight me. But if she did, she should have come better prepared. Emily blinked fast. Travis leaned back silent now. I returned to my seat. My phone on the table. My heart steady. My silence louder than their threats. They had planned a performance. They wanted control. But I came with the script already flipped. We didn't wait long. Nancy entered the restaurant like a storm you don't hear until it's already above you. Calm. Deadly. She moved straight toward our table, set down a black folder, and nodded at me like we'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. Because we had. Emily's breath caught. Travis stiffened. Ryan folded his arms and stepped back, letting the weight shift fully onto me. Nancy opened the folder with quiet precision and laid a single document on the table. An irrevocable trust. Signed. Final. Unbreakable. All of my assets, my home savings investments were already locked in. Protected. The only person who could manage a cent of it was my son, Ryan. Travis's mouth moved, but made no sound. Then rage took over. He slammed his hand on the table, his voice exploding like shrapnel. He called it manipulation. He screamed that I was playing dirty. And then when no one flinched, he turned on Emily. He shouted at her, said she ruined everything. Said she was weak, that she messed up the plan. That all she had to do was convince me. Emily didn't yell back. She stood completely still. But when she turned and looked at him, there was no fear in her face anymore. Just shame and something deeper resolve. Her voice came out hoarse, but it cut through everything. She said, "You made me do this. You made me lie to my mother. You made me feel like love was a transaction, that I was worthless without your approval." Travis froze. I stood beside her, placed my hand on her shoulder. I looked at her, not him. And I said, no one deserves to be threatened into betraying the people they love. Not even you. Emily broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But her shoulders sagged, and she leaned into me like she hadn't had a safe place in months. Nancy closed the folder, her voice calm but final. This trust cannot be reversed. Not by you. Not by her. Not by anyone. Travis backed away, eyes wide, lips trembling with silent fury. He was out of moves. Emily turned back to me. Her face was wet, her makeup gone, but her voice was hers again. "I was scared," she whispered. "I didn't want to end up alone. I didn't know how to ask for help without disappointing you." And I told her the truth. You did disappoint me, but you're still my daughter. You're still loved. But love without truth is just fear in disguise. She cried harder, but this time she didn't look away. And for the first time that night, I didn't just win. I got my child back. Nancy pulled out one more document. It was an email trail. Notes. A letter. All written by Travis. He had been planning to file for guardianship over me. He was collecting proof to say I was mentally unfit. That way he could take control of my money, my house, even my legal rights. Emily covered her mouth. Ryan's eyes narrowed. The two lawyers leaned forward, reading quickly. One asked if Travis had shared this plan with them. Travis said nothing. That silence told the truth. Nancy didn't raise her voice. She explained clearly that if he had succeeded, I would have lost everything. He would decide where I lived, what I spent, what I could sign. He would own my life on paper. One lawyer leaned in jaw tight. The other just stared at Travis like he was toxic. They had signed on to protect a client, not enable a predator. Travis was not just desperate. He was dangerous. Emily folded into herself, her body shaking, her face buried in her hands. She had believed he was strong. He was just cruel. Travis started pacing, mumbling, blaming everyone. Me? Emily. The lawyers. Even the system. I said nothing. I stood up, looked him in the eye for a moment. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't scream. I didn't spit. I didn't need revenge. I had truth, and the truth had already done its job. I walked out of Franco's with my head high. I passed the table where we once laughed. I passed the door where Emily once hugged me after ballet recitals. My chest felt heavy, but my back was straight. Let him stay behind. Let him rage. I was done being the target. I was walking out free. 3 weeks passed. I didn't hear from Emily. I didn't expect to. My phone was quiet. My house felt heavier than usual. But something inside me had changed. I wasn't sitting in silence anymore. I was choosing it. I signed up to volunteer at a local support center for seniors. Most of them were just like me. Smart people. Caring people. People who trusted the wrong faces with the right intentions. We sat in circles and shared stories. Some cried. Some couldn't speak. I did both. I told them what Travis tried to do. I told them about the dinner, the trap, and the choice I had to make to walk away. Not just from the lie, but from the hope that someone would ever fully protect me. That was my job now. The more I spoke, the stronger I felt. Pain no longer weighed me down. It was fuel. It gave me words I didn't have before. Words that helped others stand up straighter. Words that reminded me I wasn't the only one. One woman in the group clutched my hand and said, "You look like someone who's been through hell and built a home on the ashes." I smiled because that's exactly how it felt. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just somebody's mother. I wasn't someone's target. I was a woman who survived something cruel and turned it into something useful. I wasn't starting over. I was building higher with scars as scaffolding. And every brick carried a lesson that could save someone else. Ryan was the one who told me. Emily had given birth. A little girl. She wanted me to meet her. Not directly, of course. The message came through him. I sat with it for a while. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just breathed. I didn't run to the hospital. I didn't rush to be the smiling grandmother in the corner of a pastel nursery. I sat down at my kitchen table and pulled out a sheet of paper. Not to write a reply. To write a boundary. I told her I would come under one condition. Ryan had to be present at all times. There would be no discussion of finances. No subtle hints. No second agendas. If I sensed any manipulation, I would stand up and leave. Not because I didn't love her. Not because I didn't care about the baby. But because I had already survived being used once. That was enough for one lifetime. I wrote the words slowly, carefully. I imagined her reading them. I imagined her crying. But I didn't let that change what I needed to say. I ended the letter with this. I love you. That will never change. But I love myself enough now to never be manipulated again. That is what your daughter needs to see too. You are my daughter, and that will never change. But the way I allow myself to be treated has changed forever. I sealed the envelope. I gave it to Ryan. And I let go. It wasn't an ending. Not really. But it was a new beginning. One built on something I had never fully claimed before. My voice. My line in the sand. I still go to the support group every Tuesday. Not because I need saving, but because I know what it feels like to think you're alone. I sit in the same chair, hold the same mug, and wait for someone new to speak. When they do, I listen. And when they can't, I let silence do the holding. I tell my story now without shame. Not every detail, not every tear, but the truth. I say how it started with love, how it turned into pressure, and how I chose to protect myself even from someone I raised. Sometimes they cry. Sometimes they nod. But every time I see the same look in their eyes, recognition, a quiet yes. I've helped 4 women set up their own trusts. I've connected others with lawyers. I've walked one woman straight into a bank and helped her close an account her son had access to without her knowing. I don't give advice. I give company and strength. My story is no longer just about what almost happened to me. It's about what I chose to become after it. I'm not proud of the betrayal, but I'm proud of the boundary. I used to think legacy was about what you leave behind in dollars. Now I know better. Legacy is the strength you hand to the next person in line. I hope my granddaughter grows up knowing what dignity looks like, what courage sounds like, what a woman's no really means. That's what I leave behind. Not my savings, not my house, but a blueprint, a spine, a story that says you can lose almost everything and still not be broken. If you've ever loved someone who hurt, you know this, you're not weak for trusting. But you are powerful when you finally say no. Tell your story. It might be the map someone else is searching for,